Tonight, breaking news, Elon Musk's Twitter takeover. The world's richest man buying the social media site for an estimated $44 billion. Twitter's board unanimously approving the purchase. What the mogul is now saying he'll change about the platform and what it could mean for the future of free speech. Also breaking tonight, Russia's new battlefield. A missile striking an apartment building in Odessa, blasting holes through concrete floors. Kelly Kobiella is on the ground there tonight. Plus, top U.S. officials secretly traveling to Kyiv, what they said in their face-to-face meetings with the Ukrainian president. Targeting Putin's girlfriend, outrage growing after reports the U.S. declined to sanction the rumored love interest of the Russian president. What we're now learning about her mysterious past and why the State Department decided to spare her. Trump in contempt, a New York judge holding Donald Trump in contempt for failing to turn over documents related to his business dealings. The daily fines, $10,000 a day. The former president is now facing until he complies. Plus, Baldwin's police interview, new body cam video showing the moments immediately after the deadly shooting of a cinematographer on the Rust movie set, what the actor said just minutes after pulling the trigger. And full court press, a protester rushing the court at an NBA playoff game, immediately tackled by security. The protest, the third of its kind in recent days. So what's behind these courtside stunts? Top story starts right now. And good evening. Did billionaire Elon Musk just pull off the most controversial shakeup in the history of social media? The world's richest man who amassed his fortune building or transforming startups like Tesla and SpaceX, buying Twitter for an astonishing $44 billion. The board approving the purchase unanimously. The entrepreneur promising to add new features and make the platform's algorithm more transparent. But some critics fear Musk could bring back banned users in the name of protecting free speech. Musk addressing those concerns, of course, via tweet, writing, quote, "I hope that even my worst critics remain on Twitter because that is what free speech means." The polarizing figure will officially take Twitter private once regulators approve the deal. Let's get right to NBC's Jolene Kent, who leads us off tonight with details of this blockbuster deal.
One of the world's most powerful billionaires striking a deal to buy Twitter for $44 billion. The influential social media platform accepted Elon Musk's offer in a unanimous vote by the board after weeks of drama. If approved by regulators, Twitter will go private and shareholders will reap a 38% profit on their stock as of April 1st. Musk saying in a statement, punctuated by emojis on Twitter, free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy, and Twitter is the digital town square. But his ownership is already polarizing. Musk is infamous for his own trail of controversial and offensive tweets. Now, Musk promises to add new features, making the algorithms open source to increase trust, defeating the spam bots, and authenticating all humans. Musk could also bring back users who've been banned, including former President Donald Trump, who reacted today saying, "I am not going on Twitter." This will be the third big job for Musk, who's currently CEO of Tesla and SpaceX.
If you look at Musk's success stories, it's PayPal, it's Tesla, it's SpaceX, technology companies. Twitter's a whole nother animal that remains an uphill battle.
And some critics are concerned that Musk's pursuit of free speech will collide with growing safety problems on Twitter, especially for women and minorities.
Do you trust Elon Musk to make Twitter better for women?
No, I don't trust Elon Musk to make Twitter better for women at all. I just absolutely don't. If you're asking yourself if this is someone that's going to go to bat for people that are underrepresented, I just don't think that's going to be the case, unfortunately.
But Musk tweeting today he hopes even his worst critics will remain on the platform in the name of free speech.
All right, NBC News business and technology correspondent Jolene Kent joins us live now on Top Story. So, Joe, what is expected to change for the average user?
Yeah, there's been that tease of an edit button, but bigger picture, what you need to know is that Twitter is going to go private. So it's going to be subject to so much less regulatory scrutiny and those quarterly earnings report with all of that transparent data. And so users can expect a lot of changes in the name of free speech. Elon Musk has criticized Twitter as it currently stands for being skewed to one side of the political aisle. So you could see that pendulum swing in a very different direction. Tom?
Yeah, we have to see how he can actually do that. Okay, Joe Lynn Kent, we appreciate that leading us off here tonight. For more on the future of Twitter, I want to bring in Wall Street Journal reporter Tim Higgins. He's also a CNBC contributor and the author of Power Play, Tesla, Elon Musk, and the Bet of the Century. Tim, thanks so much for joining Top Story again. So Musk leads Tesla, SpaceX, two of the most transformative companies. Why did he just buy Twitter? It's 1/10 the size of Facebook. Journalists and politicians keep it relevant. But my question is why? What compelled him to buy this?
Well, ego, bravado. I mean, Twitter has might be smaller than its rivals, but it really has an outsized voice in shaping conversations, shaping brands, and really helping Elon Musk over the years become the Elon Musk that so many people around the world know, whether it's selling electric cars or selling investors on his vision for the future, whether in space or on land. It's been a key and important tool, and now he controls it.
So what has history taught us about Elon Musk, the CEO? When we think of Jeff Bezos buying the Washington Post, right, you don't really feel or sense his fingerprints when it comes to editorial. Will Musk be different?
Elon Musk seems to be signaling that he's going to have a lot of ideas and a lot of sway in that in the future of Twitter, whether it is going to be changes to how content is moderated, whether it is how transparent the company is and what tweets are promoted, or whether it is going after those spam bots that are so annoying out there. These are all things that he's talked about doing, and his history would show that he's not a guy who's going to sit back and just kind of sit on the beach and enjoy his riches. He's going to be in the weeds. He's going to be getting into the engineering, and that's going to have ramifications for the company and probably the country for years to come.
Depending on where his portfolio is at on any given day, Musk is the richest man in the world. But how much of his personal net worth is he sinking into this?
Well, he's the world's richest man. But most of his wealth is tied up in the ownership of SpaceX and in Tesla. So he's pulling this deal together by borrowing a lot of money, taking loans out on his shares of Tesla. And it's a very complicated deal and also potentially risky to those Tesla shareholders. If the company's stock was to go down, he might have to put up more shares or pay off those loans. So it's very complicated, and it's just part of the kind of the way he structures his financial life. There's a lot of risk there. He has a huge risk tolerance.
So, this is maybe a difficult question to answer, but can he save Twitter in the sense that it's become so toxic? It alienates dissent. It's largely an echo chamber, right? It leads to groupthink. Or maybe if you're a cynic, you may think that Musk loves this about Twitter because maybe he can shape his own narrative with it.
A lot of companies over the years have looked at buying Twitter, and oftentimes they decide against it because it is such a difficult problem to solve. It is that toxic element that you talked about there that these companies or these people did not want to be associated with. Whereas Elon Musk is very much of the mindset where he can wade into hard problems and solve them. And he believes, and he's arguing, that his stewardship of this company will be able to protect it as a platform for free speech, that if there are people on there that he doesn't agree with and he doesn't like, that will be an illustration that it's upholding free speech. So when we say, is he going to be able to fix it? I guess we're not quite sure what he thinks is wrong with it at this point, other than the idea that it's not transparent, other than the idea that there are a lot of spam bots, other than the need for an edit button.
All right, Tim Higgins, he wrote a book about Elon Power Play. Tim, we appreciate you. Love having you on Top Story. We want to move on now to the latest on the war in Ukraine. The U.S. promising more military aid after top officials traveled to the capital city of Kyiv in secret. Russia's relentless assault intensifying in Odessa, where a deadly missile strike hit an apartment building. Kelly Cobier is on the ground for us there tonight.
Tonight, Russia unleashing attacks on Kharkiv, the shelling setting apartments on fire. You can't even imagine. It's horrific, this witness says. Russia intensifying its assaults on eastern Ukraine just hours after that American show of support in Kyiv. The U.S. Secretaries of State and Defense meeting face-to-face with Ukraine President Zelensky.
We will continue to do everything possible to ensure that you're successful.
The U.S. promising more military aid today to Ukraine, bringing the total to $3.7 billion since the war started.
In terms of Russia's war aims, Russia has already failed, and Ukraine has already succeeded.
The White House has been under pressure to send officials to Ukraine after several European presidents, plus British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, traveled here, though the White House says there are still no plans for President Biden to make the trip. Asked today about the Kyiv meeting, he said,
"How do you think it went, sir?"
Shortly after the U.S. officials departed, Russia striking multiple train stations in Ukraine. Much of the Western military aid arrives here by train. Meanwhile, the southern port city of Odessa is increasingly becoming a target. This video showing the moment a Russian missile hit an apartment building over the weekend. 8 were killed, including 3-month-old Kira, her mother, and her grandmother. Today, they're cleaning up after the first strike here in 3 weeks. The missile came from that direction, hit the front of the building, and went straight through to the back. People here, until now, felt relatively safe. Inside, apartments incinerated, a hole blasted through the concrete floor. It was like a movie. We were having tea, and we heard a huge boom, says Natalia, who lives in a neighboring building. Tonight, Russia is also fighting fires at an oil depot near one of Russia's most important export pipelines. The cause still unclear. After this visit to Ukraine, Defense Secretary Austin said the point of the U.S. effort now is to weaken Russia to such a degree that it cannot do again what it has done in invading Ukraine. Tom.
Kelly Kobiea for us tonight. Kelly, we thank you for that. Also tonight, major outcry over the lack of sanctions against Vladimir Putin's rumored girlfriend, Alina Kabeva, a former Olympian in rhythmic gymnastics, once known as Russia's most flexible woman. The scrutiny coming after the Wall Street Journal reported that the U.S. government considered them, but then stood down. The White House now responding. Isa Gutierrez reports.
Tonight, no sanctions on an alleged secret romance, raising eyebrows. More scrutiny on the lack of financial punishments against Vladimir Putin's rumored girlfriend, Alina Kabeva, after a report from the Wall Street Journal saying sanctions were considered but then withheld. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki responding to a question about Kabeva Monday.
Do you have any comment on why you would refrain from sanctioning someone arguably close to Putin?
Well, I would remind you we're continuing to review sanctions. No one is safe from our sanctions. We've already, of course, sanctioned President Putin, but also his daughter, his closest cronies, and we'll continue to review more.
The Wall Street Journal reporting that the U.S. government describes 38-year-old Kabeva as Putin's, quote, mistress. The article also saying she's the mother of at least 3 of Putin's children. In 2008, a Russian tabloid reported that Putin had divorced his wife at the time and planned to marry Kabeva. Putin vigorously denied the story, and hours later, publishers shut the paper down. Kabeva is a former Russian Vogue cover model and Olympic gold medalist in rhythmic gymnastics, once called Russia's most flexible woman. In the early 2000s, she was suspended from competition after allegedly testing positive for a banned substance. She appealed the decision at the time. Kabeva has been rumored to live in Switzerland with her children. A Change.org petition to have her expelled from that country last month has received more than 73,000 signatures. Over the weekend, the former gymnast made a rare public appearance at a gymnastics exhibition in Moscow. She spoke at the event, which is named the Alina Festival in her honor.
Потому что это праздник не только для нашей страны, это праздник каждой семьи. У каждой семьи есть история войны, и мы ни в коем случае не должны забывать про это, а передавать из поколения в поколение.
She made the comments standing in front of Z's, a symbol supporting Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Are you surprised by the fact that sanctions have not been imposed on Alina Kabeva?
Yes, I would say that it's surprising given that the administration seems to be trying to cast a wide net with respect to Putin's family.
Daniel Glazer is the former Assistant Secretary of Terrorist Financing at the U.S. Department of Treasury under President Obama.
There's many other things that the U.S. and their allies have not done, including comprehensively targeting the Russian financial system, targeting Russian energy exports completely, imposing secondary sanctions.
On Monday, following the Journal's report, an ally of the the now jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, tweeting in part, quote, "They literally got afraid that Putin would react aggressively. What can he do in response to sanctions against the mother of his 3 children that he hasn't already done?" He'd previously tweeted Navalny's anti-corruption foundation study, alleging Kabayeva and her family play a role in hiding Putin and his associates' fortune overseas, and calling for her to be sanctioned immediately. NBC News reached out to the Treasury Department, and they declined to comment.
All right, Issa joins us now live on set. Issa, I know you have more reporting on this. There might be a reason why they haven't sanctioned Kabayeva just yet.
Well, Tom, I spoke to former Assistant Treasury Secretary Glazer about this and asked him, could this be a matter of a lack of evidence, linking Putin and Kabayeva? What he said to me is, look, there does need to be some level of proof in order for someone to be targeted by U.S. sanctions, right? But he doesn't think that that is what's happening here. And as you heard Jen Psaki say today at the White House, it doesn't sound, based on her answer, like sanctions against Alina Kabayeva are completely off the table in the future. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. All right, Issa, great job. Thank you for that. Back here at home, there were flames tearing through several states out west. Those wildfires we've been covering here on Top Story continuing to rage during an unrelenting early start to the fire season. Steve Patterson has more on how those fires have now turned deadly.
Tonight, the western wildfires turning deadly, raging through Nebraska and New Mexico with no end in sight. Nebraska authorities say a retired fire chief was killed on Sunday and at least 15 firefighters were injured while battling blazes across the state. The fire that killed 66-year-old John Thrumble has burned more than 40,000 acres and has no containment. The department says this year's fires have been harder to handle. The Nebraska National Guard deploying crews on the ground and in the air to help exhausted firefighters. The fires made even more devastating by the strong winds, forcing thousands to evacuate in an unusually early start to the fire season. In New Mexico, 20 fires continue to burn out of control. The governor declaring a state of emergency, activating the National Guard. The announcement comes after 2 large fires merged in northern New Mexico on Saturday, forming the second largest blaze in the state, now only 12% contained.
Particularly here in New Mexico, our fire seasons have been starting earlier and they've been going longer.
Wildfires now becoming a year-round threat in the west. In Arizona, some residents were allowed to return after evacuating due to a fire near Flagstaff that destroyed at least 30 homes. But in New Mexico, winds and temperatures remain strong enough to keep evacuation orders in place.
All right, Steve joins us now from Los Angeles. Steve, I want to pick up where you just left off there. Let's talk about the forecast and what firefighters are going to be facing. It sounds like a mixed bag.
Yeah, Tom, New Mexico may be getting some very welcome rain and even snow in parts of the state, but the wind, both there and in Nebraska, is expected to pick up again by tomorrow. So crews tonight rushing to get containment lines on these fires, already locked in another race against time. Tom?
Steve Patterson for us tonight. Steve, thank you for that. And we want to stay out west now. Authorities in New Mexico releasing new footage and body cam video from the deadly Rust Set shooting. For the first time, we're seeing Alec Baldwin rehearsing with the gun before the fatal shot and hearing what he said to police moments later. Miguel Almaguer with the video and the story.
It is our first look at the chaos on the set of Rust as paramedics frantically but unsuccessfully try to save cinematographer Helena Hutchins' life. While laying next to her in agony, director Joel Souza is treated for his gunshot wound. The stunning and somber body camera footage reveals the life and death struggle that unfolded after Alec Baldwin fired the deadly shot.
Are you doing okay? No, I'm not, actually.
The actor and producer speaking to investigators for the first time.
I was the one holding the gun, yeah. Okay. I'm happy to stay right here and do everything I need. Do you want a cigar? Hands are shaking.
After a despondent Baldwin recounts some of the shooting.
As of right now, her status is questionable.
Crime scene technicians photographed his clothing, documenting evidence while also obtaining this video. It shows Baldwin during rehearsal pulling his revolver, moments before deputies say he fired the fatal shot. Afterwards, Assistant Director Dave Hall's with Baldwin, trying to figure out how a live round got into the gun.
Shake test before we put the gun in load.
Hours later, Baldwin and the crew were questioned at length by investigators. The trove of evidence includes a series of emails from crew members raising serious safety concerns before the shooting. There's also messages from Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, the movie's armorer, to supplier Seth Kenney, in which she asked for live ammunition for a different film months earlier, which is never allowed on set. Kenney replies to the ask, "It's a serious mistake," always ends in tears.
Do those text messages trouble you?
I think it shows some behavior and some actions on different movie sets with some of the same people that were involved in the Rust movie set.
And this is potentially how live ammunition may have made its way onto the Rust set?
I think it's possible.
Tonight, authorities say a series of fatal mistakes led to last October's shooting. The question now, are criminal charges next?
All right, Miguel, and that's exactly what I want to ask you. We kind of see now what investigators have been looking at, all those videos, the body cam, the interview tapes. What's the status of that criminal investigation?
Well, Tom, the sheriff's office says it still has some loose ends before it ties up its part of the investigation. It'll then go to the district attorney for them to review them and decide if charges should be filed. We're talking weeks, potentially even months, until we know the answer to that question. Tom?
Miguel Almaguer with a lot of new reporting for us tonight. Miguel, thank you for that. Now to the new legal trouble for President Trump. A New York State judge finding the former commander-in-chief in contempt of court today for failing to comply with the civil investigation into his business. He's now facing a $10,000 fine every day until he turns over those documents. NBC News correspondent for investigations, Tom Winter, joins us now. So, Tom, talk to us about what this case is about and what documents has he not turned over yet?
Right. So this goes directly to the president's personal trove of documents. We're not talking about corporate records here or filings with the IRS or New York State. We're talking about his own personal Post-it notes. Now, we've seen over the years, that's how the president likes to communicate. He prints out documents, writes a Post-it note on it, and sends it to his employees. They're looking for those type of documents that they say could be included in some of his personal filing cabinets. They're also looking for a couple of old cell phones. So that's what they've been seeking here. He had a March 31st deadline. The judge agreeing with the Attorney General's office today, Tom, and saying, look, you have not done either enough of a search or have documented the search that you've taken, or you just haven't provided these documents. The Attorney General's civil investigation, they're owed these documents. You need to turn them over. And since you didn't meet my deadline, you're in for $10,000 a day. Now, it's not retroactive. And another thing here, Tom, this can be appealed. And in fact, the president's attorney is coming forward today saying they obviously disagree with the judge's decision, but they will try to appeal this. If the appellate court stays this, the meter doesn't start running on what the president has to pay. So it's not a done deal at this point.
Okay, the president still has a few legal moves in. Correct. Talk to me about the real estate company that's sort of at the center of some of this with the appraisals to Trump's properties.
Right, we're talking about Cushman & Wakefield. And so they're another entity here that's been wrapped up in all of this, another firm that's been involved in this civil investigation, and another place where they have sought documents from the investigators from the New York Attorney General's office. They say, the Attorney General's office, that Cushman & Wakefield has not provided the type of documents that they've been requesting so far as well. They went to the court and they said, hey, we want you to compel them to turn over these documents to us. Today, the judge, same judge that made the ruling on the $10,000 a day, that judge also determined, hey, you've got to turn over these documents as well. So again, this investigation is still ongoing, while the criminal investigation, Tom, by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, we've heard crickets from that. No real overt steps in that since the end of last year, even though they say that investigation is ongoing. But now no grand jury believed to be sitting and hearing evidence day to day or week to week. So the civil investigation is really the only thing the president has facing him in New York State as far as imminent risks involving his business.
All right, Tom Winter for us tonight. Tom, we appreciate that. We want to head to Washington now. At the Supreme Court today, religion and football. The case of a coach fired for refusing to stop praying on the field after games. Was it a violation of his religious freedom or an attempt to prevent an official endorsement of religion? Here's Pete Williams.
When Joseph Kennedy was an assistant high school football coach in Bremerton, Washington, he began dropping to one knee on the 50-yard line right after games to pray.
It just was myself, just giving thanks out on a football field after a game, and it kind of organically, I would say, kind of grew.
Soon his own players gathered around. So did players and coaches from the opposing teams. The school district told him to find a more private place to pray, wanting to avoid the appearance of an official endorsement of his religious views. But he kept at it, prompting more attention and bigger crowds.
I'm just doing the free exercise of my religion.
But some of the Supreme Court's justices today said that pushed members of the team to join in.
The idea of why the school can discipline him is that puts a kind of undue pressure, a kind of coercion on students to participate in religious activities when they may not wish to.
But the court's conservative justices suggested they believed he was expressing his own private views and wasn't coercing anyone.
This was an, huddle up team, which is a common coach phrase.
And several justices said the coach shouldn't have been punished just because he was expressing a religious view.
Suppose that when Coach Kennedy went out to the center of the field on these two occasions, all he did was to wave a Ukrainian flag. Would you have fired him?
All right, Pete joins us now from Washington. Pete, so many groups watching this case closely, but remind our viewers, what's at stake here with this decision? Is Kennedy going to be able to get his job back? Is that what he's fighting for in this court case?
Oh, absolutely. He doesn't live in Bremerton anymore, but he says he'd move back in a heartbeat if the Supreme Court rules in his favor. And that is apparently what's going to happen here. Now, I think the ruling will probably be pretty narrow, though. I think many people thought this case might be the stalking horse for bringing prayer back to public schools, but there didn't seem to be any appetite for that today. The court did seem to draw a line because what he did was not inside the classroom. It was on the field, after games. It would be very different if the math teacher opened his lesson with a prayer. I don't think we're going there.
All right, Pete Williams for us. Pete, thank you for that. Now to the Texas border. Today, a federal judge announcing he intends to temporarily block the Biden administration from lifting Title 42. The Trump-era COVID policy was supposed to end in May, a deadline that was met with bipartisan pushback. The judge's move coming as a group of House Republicans visited the border. Morgan Chesky is there tonight.
Tonight on the southern border, frantic desperation. A shrieking mother plunging into the Rio Grande, chased by Mexican authorities, scrambling to stop the surge of migrants. This family from Cuba, like thousands of others, risking everything to cross. For more than 2 years, many migrants have been denied entry because of Title 42, a public health policy enacted during the pandemic by the Trump administration, which expedited deportations back to Mexico. U.S. officials tell NBC News 170,000 migrants are waiting in Mexico, ready to cross, while the White House lifts the Title 42 restriction on May 23rd.
We ask them what their plan will be. No plan is given.
Today, a Republican delegation, led by House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, toured Eagle Pass, criticizing the White House for failing to find a permanent solution.
If President Biden lifts Title 42, what we see today will be much worse.
The group also honored specialist Bishop Evans, a National Guardsman whose body was recovered today in the Rio Grande. Authorities say he disappeared in a fast current Friday, trying to save 2 drowning migrants, underscoring what Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz calls his biggest need.
We need more agents. We need to resource some equipment and some help from other agencies. This just can't be a border security or border patrol problem.
Dairo, Hani, and Ashley, that family from Cuba, made it to the U.S. I spoke with them before they were taken into custody.
Do you have hope now that you're here?
Yes, of course, the father said.
All right, Morgan joins us from the border tonight there in Eagle Pass, Texas. And Morgan, we have some breaking developments on Title 42, as you know. As we saw in your piece, pressure was mounting for the president to keep that policy in place. Now, a federal judge has expressed their intentions to block it from being lifted in May. What is the administration saying tonight?
Yeah, Tom, tonight the Department of Homeland Security is not making any official response. This comes after a lawsuit was filed by 3 states, Louisiana, Missouri, and Arizona. A federal judge, as you mentioned, saying that he plans to grant that temporary restraining order that essentially means Title 42 would not necessarily end on May 23rd. No word on how exactly long it would go, but as of right now, that May 23rd deadline doesn't appear to be in play any longer. Tom?
Back now with the audio tapes Johnny Depp likely does not want you to hear. On day 4 of testimony in his $50 million defamation lawsuit against his ex-wife Amber Heard, there was explosive evidence presented today. NBC's Gotti Schwartz has more, and we want to warn you, some of the testimony may be disturbing.
Tonight, the tense cross-examination of Johnny Depp comes to an end in his $50 million defamation lawsuit against ex-wife Amber Heard.
The next article, also from May 10, 2017. Mr. Depp. This is a pathetic attempt.
Heard's defense attempting to paint Depp as an abusive husband, sharing a number of edited audio clips that appear to depict her and Depp arguing.
Go put your cigarettes out on someone else. You have consequences for your actions. That's it. Shut up, fat.
I think that was another grossly exaggerated moment of Miss Heard's. I did not put a cigarette out on her or throw a cigarette at her.
This is not helping, you stupid. This is not helping.
I up and crying in my bedroom after I had dumped you a week prior. A week prior after you beat the out of me, and then a week later you show up at my doorstep in my room saying you want to say goodbye. Okay, say goodbye.
Oh, I said it.
Yes, you did say it.
Depp denying he ever hit Heard and saying the only one he ever abused was himself, while her legal team introduced text messages between Depp and others.
Mr. Depp, in this text message from you to Christian Carino, your agent, on August 15th, 2016, you say, "She will hit the wall hard," 4 exclamation points. And then later down you say, "I can only hope that karma kicks in and takes the gift of breath from her." Did I read that right? You read that correctly, sir.
Depp attempting to explain texts brought up by the defense last week, like this one, where Depp texted Paul Bettany saying, quote, "Let's burn Amber and let's drown her before we burn her."
For example, the text that is about burning Ms. Heard it's directly from Monty Python in the sketch about burning witches and then drowning the witches. This is a film that we'd all watched when we were 10, and it's just irreverent and abstract humor.
Heard's legal team also trying to establish that damaging stories about Depp had been circulating before Heard's 2018 op-ed that led to this lawsuit, in which she said she was a victim of abuse, but never specifically named Depp.
For years prior to 2018, when Amber wrote the op-ed, there were numerous negative news stories about you. Yes, it all started with Ms. Heard going directly to a court to get a TRO, which is with a bruise on her face and paparazzi. That was the sort of beginning of the ball rolling down the hill and gaining momentum. There were plenty of negative news stories about you prior to May 27th, 2016, correct? From 1984 up until then, they're both. So, of course, people write negative stories.
Depp's legal team has insisted Depp was the victim of physical abuse, something Heard's team has denied. Depp's lawyers playing this audio just before he stepped down from the stand.
Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence. And yes.
All right, Gotti joins us now live. Gotti, we heard from another witness today, Ben King, a house manager for a property in Australia where this alleged abuse against Depp took place. What did we learn from him?
Yeah, Tom, most of Ben King's testimony today revolved around his role as house manager for that Australian home, where at one point after a fight between Heard and Depp, he described picking up a piece of Johnny Depp's severed finger to try to get it to doctors to reattach. And years ago, Depp says that was an accident he did himself, but now he's testifying that that injury came from Amber Heard throwing a vodka bottle at him. A very gruesome testimony about an incident that we're likely to hear a lot more of as this case continues. Tom?
All right, we are back now with Top Stories newsfeed, and we begin with a Texas court delaying Melissa Lucio's execution. Lucio was set to be executed on Wednesday for the death of her 2-year-old daughter. But lawyers say new evidence shows the girl's death was caused by a fall down a staircase, and nearly half of the jurors who initially sentenced her to die have called for a new trial. A lower court will now review her case. Next to another protester being removed from a Timberwolves game this week. And take a look at this. Security tackling an animal rights activist dressed in a referee shirt right when she jumped from her seat onto the court. This is the third time a protester has disrupted a Timberwolves game recently. The group Direct Action Everywhere says they are demonstrating against the team's owner over the way chickens were killed at an egg farm he owns during a bird flu outbreak. All right, and a wild ride on an interstate in South Carolina looking more like a wild gallop. Look at this, a pony on the loose, running down I-85 this weekend. A driver trying to shield it from being hit. Highway Patrol says that slowdown led to a 7-car crash. Fortunately, no one was seriously hurt, and that pony, if you're wondering about the pony, it was rescued. It's not clear how it got on the interstate in the first place. And the first private crew to visit the International Space Station returning back down to Earth today. SpaceX crew Dragon capsule Endeavour splashed down safely off the coast of Florida with its 4 Axiom 1 crew members inside. They're wrapping up a 2-week trip to the ISS, conducting research missions for organizations around the world. All right, we want to head overseas now. The French presidential election. Emmanuel Macron holding off a challenge from far-right leader Marine Le Pen to retain the French presidency. Voter turnout lower than it was 5 years ago. Macron, the centrist incumbent, won 58.5% of the vote in Sunday's second-round runoff compared to Le Pen's 41.5%. NBC senior international correspondent Keir Simmons covered this election for us. So, Keir, what does this win say for Macron considering the low turnout?
Well, you know, it was a holiday on the day of the vote, Tom, so that would have had an impact. But that low turnout also tells us something about a certain level of apathy and a kind of disillusion with the political system, very similar to what we're seeing in the US. So the French people, you know, they will vote for, in the first round, many different political leaders, many different political options. In the second round, they just have 2 options. Now, many people say that in the first round they vote with their heart, in the second round they vote with their brain, but inevitably, because they only have 2 options, it's kind of the least worst option. So many people chose not to vote at all. Again, though, it does say something about the political culture here and how people feel about the options they have.
And Keir, truth be told, one of the main reasons why you're there is because the whole world was watching this election, right? Le Pen, a far-right candidate. This is her 3rd presidential candidacy. There was sort of a concern by many in France that this could be a huge sort of blow to Macron if he obviously lost this election. But she was pro-Russian, far-right message, aligning with the Kremlin's views on Ukraine and NATO. What does that say about the direction of the country? How important of a role do you think those positions took in this election?
You know, Tom, there's really a split screen with this election, the domestic side and the foreign side. In terms of the foreign side, you know, leaders in the West, many will be breathing a sigh of relief precisely because of the description you gave there of Marine Le Pen's global politics. It really would have terrified many Western leaders, the idea of a politician in Paris who was close to President Putin. That hasn't happened. Macron is a centrist candidate, and his views align very much, for example, with President Biden. So in the White House, they will certainly be relieved. This was a vote, in a sense, for stability at a time when Europe is, of course, so unstable with that war in Ukraine. And in that sense, many Western leaders will be thankful to the French voter for delivering this. Again, though, many of those voters voting on domestic issues, not on those foreign policy issues at all. And that's where the tension really is.
And on those domestic issues, you know, Le Pen ran on an anti-immigrant platform, including radical changes to the rights of immigrants compared with those for French citizens. Was that something you were hearing a lot as you talked to voters?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, just think about this. There was one candidate in the first round, a kind of Bernie Sanders figure, who got more than 7 million votes. In the second round, all of those, if you like, socialist voters had to choose between the centrist candidate, Macron, and the far-right candidate, Le Pen. Some of them even moved to Le Pen, even though they were socialists. So, yeah, a great deal of frustration here in France that we were seeing on those domestic issues, and that was what Le Pen was trying to tap into. It was the highest vote for the far right since the Second World War, and many are saying that it does bode badly if you don't agree with those kind of views for future elections. That being said, though, Tom, nothing takes away from Macron's victory here. It was the first time that a French president has been re-elected in 20 years.
Keir Simmons for us tonight. Keir, we thank you. We're going to stay on this international beat now. It's time for Top Stories Global Watch and a search and rescue operation in New Delhi. At least 2 people died after a building under renovation collapsed. A few others were rescued, including this survivor who was able to climb out of the rubble. First responders pulling him to safety. It's not clear yet what caused the building to come down. Next to a shocking moment on a tour boat in Mexico. You have to watch closely here. Authorities say the boat either hit a whale or a whale shark. You can see it launching into the air there, sending at least one passenger flying off the boat. In this video shared by local government office, 6 people were hurt, including 3 children. 2 adults had to be hospitalized. The incident is now under investigation. And Guinness World Record says the world's oldest person has died at the age of 119. Kane Tanaka died last week. She was born in 1903, the same year the Wright brothers had the first controlled flight of their motor-driven airplane. Her family said she had a sweet tooth even through her final days, with requests for things like chocolate and cola. All right, maybe that's the secret. Coming up, the mysterious outbreak causing concern around the globe. Cases of hepatitis in children reported in 12 countries, including the U.S. What you need to know to protect your kids from the highly contagious and potentially deadly liver infection. Stay with us. All right, back now with the mysterious hepatitis outbreak in children. The CDC asking physicians to be on the lookout for severe cases as the contagious liver infection reaches a dozen countries, including the U.S. Emily Aketa has more on what parents need to know.
A mysterious hepatitis outbreak is sending kids to the hospital, killing at least 1 child, according to health officials. The majority of infections popping up in the UK, while here in the States, 2 have been recorded in North Carolina and another 9 in Alabama.
And the main reason the concern is high is because 1 is children and 2, the source is unknown.
Hepatitis refers to inflammation of the liver and can cause vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, and a key indicator, jaundice. So far, the World Health Organization has tallied 169 cases among mostly healthy kids, 10% needing liver transplants. Experts say the overall number of hepatitis cases is relatively small, but the circumstances are unusual. Nearly half of the hepatitis patients tested positive for adenovirus, which is commonly linked with colds. Dr. Helena Gutierrez was one of the first people to notice the concerning trend in Alabama.
When the first case came up showing that it was adenovirus, we said, all right, this is odd. We routinely don't see it again in a healthy kid. So I think by the time we got the third, we said, wait, this is different.
The CDC is urging providers to be on the lookout for hepatitis in kids, and for parents,
Not a time to panic, not a time to be overly concerned, but just keep an eye on your child. If you have any issues or any questions, simply talk to your doctor.
The unexplained outbreak compounding concerns amid the pandemic. Emily Ikeda, NBC News, New York.
And when we come back, the moment a mom and her children were reunited with the officers who rescued them from their burning apartment. Stay with us. Finally tonight, we want to bring you an update to a story we told you about last week, a dramatic fire rescue caught on camera in Indianapolis. A mother dropping her children from a second-story window to officers on the ground. That family now saying thank you. You may remember this video, body cam footage showing police officers rushing to a burning apartment complex in South Indianapolis.
I need you to start knocking on doors and getting everybody out of there.
From the back of the building, a call for help from Mother Christine Culp and her 2 children.
Okay, please, I can't breathe. I got my kids in here.
Okay, where are they at?
They're right here in my bed.
How old are they?
2 and 3.
Okay.
The grace of God that I woke up in the middle of the night, and as soon as all the flames and everything in the front room, I just grabbed the kids and went to my room, put up a blanket, kicked out the window, and just called 911. And I just stayed on praying and staying on the phone with dispatch.
326, can you come around back and help me with these kids?
Police below quickly sprang into action.
You want to try and pass them down to me real quick?
Asking Mom Christine to drop her children out of the window and into the hands of Officer Aaron Laird waiting below.
I was willing to put myself at risk, and I know the officers were also.
Those officers first catching 2-year-old Ezekiel and then 3-year-old Elena.
We got her. You want it next?
I just kept praying. I just felt that in my heart that my kids were in good hands.
The whole family getting out safely.
You did good. You did so good. You guys are so brave.
That family now saying thank you to the officers.
What are you doing?
I just felt it in my heart. I just knew that you guys would save me and my kids. I really appreciate it, truly, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
And 3-year-old Elena now has quite the story to tell.
He tells Mommy threw me out a window. We jumped out a window.
So do those officers.
A lot of times we don't get to see good outcomes of situations given what we're called to. So a situation like this, it feels good. It feels really good. I'll remember this for the rest of my life, and I hope she does too.
And we'd like to thank our Indianapolis affiliate, WTHR, for their help with that story. Thanks so much for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.